Okay, today we are talking about direct and indirect objects, and we'll have a little side discussion about subject and object pronouns, especially who versus whom. So by the end of this video, hopefully you can identify these two kinds of objects in sentences. So what is an object in general? Well, the object of the sentence is when a noun, or sometimes pronoun, is receiving action from a verb. So, in the sentence, he ate the watermelon. He is my subject. Ate is my verb. But what did I eat? The watermelon. So, the noun watermelon, in terms of meaning, goes with the verb ate. It's the thing being eaten or receiving the action of the verb. Coincidentally, they're also right next to each other, which most of the time is going to be true for objects. Okay? In the second sentence, the delinquents spray painted the wall. Once again, here's my subject, verb. And what got spray painted? Well, the wall did. Okay, so there's my object of the sentence. Teacher, subject, passed out. What did she pass out? Candy. That's my object. Okay? Sounds easy so far, yes? However, don't just assume that any word after a verb is an object, because not all sentences even have an object. Like, look at this one. If a sentence has an adverb or an adjective at the end, that's not an object. Objects have to be a noun or pronoun. So, for example, her new album is what? Amazing. Amazing is an adjective describing the noun album. That's not an object. Her progress is occurring slowly. Occurring how? Slowly, adverb. That's not an object either. And other types of non-nouns like verbals or the infinitive to help or a preposition like logged on, non-nouns are not objects. Cool. So once you know what an object is, we have to filter it down to direct versus indirect objects. There's two kinds, friends. A direct object is the primary noun or thing being acted on. So on the previous slide, when we talked about the watermelon, the wall, and the candy, those were all direct objects. Those were the immediate things being acted upon by the verb or the thing receiving the verb's action. Okay? So it answers the question of what? What did I buy a present? Indirect objects, on the other hand, are the people or things who receive the direct object. So, who received the present? He did, or she gave it to him. In sentence number 1 over here, she, subject, gave verb. What did she give? The present. Okay, but who got that present? Him, or he did. Okay? We'll come back to location in the sentence in a minute. Okay? I bought a book, but who did I buy it for? I bought it for Belle. What did I cook? Omelets. Who did I cook them for? Our parents, like maybe if you're making them breakfast or something. Okay? Now, you are not cooking your parents. That is illegal and not cool. But you can cook omelets for them as the recipients. Okay? My bestie gave me his math notes. Best friend is my subject. Gave what? The notes. To whom? To me. All right? But friendly reminder, not every sentence has objects at all, and not every sentence with a direct object will have an indirect one. Like look at number 5 here. Brutus runs marathons. The end. Marathon is a noun. It's my direct object, and there's no there's no indirect object here, and that's okay. But let's notice a pattern in example sentences 1 through 5 for a moment. If there is an indirect object, it comes first. Him, Belle, parents, me, etc. But if there is no indirect object, then what comes after the verb is going to be the direct object. Okay? That word order is important. Here's why. Sometimes in life you're going to be tempted to say that something is an indirect object that isn't. So to review, we already talked about what an indirect object is, but here's what it's not. If you have a recipient at the very end of a sentence and it's next to a preposition, then it's no longer an indirect object. Now it's the object of a preposition, which is a whole other thing. And don't be intimidated by that, because here's what I mean. A correct sentence with an indirect object would be, my teacher gave us extra time to work. Teacher, subject, gave. Gave what? Extra time to work. Who's the recipient of that time? Us. So that's the correct version. It would not be an indirect object if I said, my teacher gave extra time to work to us. Okay? To is a preposition. Now, prepositions are technically a whole other lesson, but the short answer is that prepositions are time, space, and location words like to, for, with, by, in, etc. There's like hundreds of prepositions, well, more than 150 of them in English, okay? So there's a couple that are very common though, like to, and here at the end of the sentence, us is now the object of a preposition, and that's not an indirect object anymore. Okay, according to most grammarians, aka grammar people. Now, in this sentence, it looks more tempting, right? We cooked some omelets for our parents. For is technically a preposition. Well, for can also be a conjunction. Again, whole other story. Okay? But here, we're at the end of the sentence. It's got a preposition in front of it. It would be more appropriate to say this. Cool? Cool. So again, if there is an indirect object, it's going to come right after that verb and then the direct one. So who cares about objects? You might be thinking that this feels like a really random grammar topic that we may not need to care. Well, we actually do, because indirect and direct objects can affect several things, including using the right pronoun in the right spot in a sentence, which we're going to get to in a moment in the next slide anyway. Later on, if and when you learn about active versus passive voice, then being able to identify the object of a sentence will help you with that topic. And honestly, being able to locate an object can help you determine if a sentence is complete or not. Because look at this fragment here. Gave him the book. Well, there's no subject. Brutus gave him the book would be a complete sentence because it has a subject. If you were not good at subjects and objects, you might be tempted to think that this fragment is complete because you see the word him or you see the word book and maybe you think, oh, there's a noun in that sentence, it must be fine. But it's not, it's a fragment, okay? Because it has no subject, it only has objects. So again, objects affect more than one area of grammar, and this is a good thing for us to learn now. While we're talking about objects, we need to also talk about subject versus object pronouns. Now, we already talked about how in a majority of English sentences, the word order goes subject, verb, and then if there's an object, the object will come last. That is active voice, and that's how most English sentences work. And that's how most genres of writing prefer sentences to look. So if that's true, then subject pronouns are the ones that happen at the beginning. I, you, he, she, it, we, they would be our subject pronouns. Okay? We'll come back to that in a moment and why that's important. Object pronouns are the ones that go toward the end, because again, in active voice in English, the object is usually toward the end of a sentence. So, the box of cookies are for me. Okay? Or you, him, her, it, us, them. These are object pronouns toward the end of a sentence. Okay? Subject versus object pronouns will matter for who versus whom, and will also matter for tricky little moments about I versus me. For example, if you've ever wondered about me and my friends, like me and my friends are going to the movies would be an incorrect sentence, because it should be my friends and I, subject, are going to the movies. Or someone bought presents for my friends and me at the end of a sentence. Okay? We'll get to that again in a few moments when we talk about some example sentences. But once you start to figure out subject versus object pronouns, it'll help you a lot with who versus whom, which is going to come up on standardized tests and is going to come up in high-level writing. And it's actually a lot simpler than you might think, because who is the subject pronoun and whom is the object pronoun? So most of the time, who is going to need to go early in the sentence in the subject spot. So my brother is the subject, so I would use who to describe my brother. Okay? Whoever is a variation of who, and this is my subject of the sentence, so I'm going to use whoever instead of whomever. Okay? So again, subject pronoun early in the sentence. Who. Whom is an object pronoun, so it's often going to go either toward the end of the sentence or it's going to go with a preposition. Ooh, we already talked about prepositions in this lesson. Remember we talked about to, for, with, by, etc.? Well, the word whom goes with prepositions. To whom, for whom, with whom, by whom, etc. Okay? So I feel sorry for the person with whom you go to the dance. Ooh, burn. Okay? I, subject. Feel sorry for. Who do I feel sorry for? This person, this object. So I'm describing them with whom. Oh, and bonus. It had a preposition, so that was another clue that whom needs to be happening. Same thing with whomever. Over here we talked about whoever as a subject pronoun. Same thing with whomever as an object pronoun. If it's to whom, you would also use to whomever. Okay? Some people like to use the following memory tip at the bottom of your screen. Some people like to remember that if you would use the word he, use who. If you could use the word him in the sentence, use whom. For example, if I said he is mean, then you would talk about who is mean. If you're talking about they will give a prize to him, then you could replace him with whom or whomever. Okay? So I think we're ready for some practice. I want you to look over these sentences for a moment, pause the video, see if you can figure it out, and then push play again when you're ready to hear the answers. Go. Ready to talk about it? Here we go. My brother and I want to go fishing. The reason the answer is I is because I is a subject pronoun, and I'm currently in the subject spot of the sentence. We want to go fishing. My brother and I want to go. However, in number 2, she needs to take turns and give the car keys to me. Now, I know it should be me instead of I for more than one reason. It probably sounds funny to you anyway to say I in this moment, but also, ooh, I've got a preposition here, so I probably want that object pronoun. Okay? Now, questions are tricky because whenever you have a question, you have rearranged the order of words, right? So technically, like, I should talk to someone about getting a refund. So that was tricky. But my understanding is that this should be whom. In this next sentence, I, subject, owe, verb, this award, object, to my mother, recipient. Now, this is an object right now. I'm still in the object area of the sentence, so I'm going to pick whom, the object pronoun. In number 5, who ate the last cookie? It's a subject. In the subject spot, I'm using who. And then 6, I'm going with preposition, whomever. Hopefully this is gradually getting easier for you. In the last practice, let's talk about direct versus indirect object. We, subject, bought. Now, here's what's really important. If you're ever looking at a sentence and you can't figure out whether it's a direct or indirect object, don't just look at location in the sentence. Think about meaning and what actually makes sense. Can you buy a sister? Well, not legally. I mean, arguably, adoption is you have to pay for that, but you don't buy sisters, okay? You can buy an iPhone, though, so it makes sense that the iPhone is the object being bought. It's the object or direct object of that verb, okay? Someone, subject, needs to give verbs. Well, verb plus infinitive, but that's okay. Now, we need to give water, direct object, to a recipient, me. So the word me is the indirect object. Our boss, subject, gave, verb. Now, did I give an employee of the month or did I give a $100 bonus away? Yeah, I gave a $100 bonus. So $100 bonus is my direct object, which means the employee is now my indirect object. It's the recipient of that bonus. All right. Now, we covered a lot of material in a short time. I hope you found this lesson helpful, and you've got more practice coming if you need that. Thank you for listening.